Welcome back. If you enjoy real disturbing stories like these, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who loves late-night horror. And before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And let me know, have you ever experienced something you still can't explain? Turn off the lights, lock your doors. Let's begin. I never believed in the graveyard shift curse until my radio crackled at 3:14 a.m. I was working as a night security guard at a massive, newly abandoned corporate campus in suburban Illinois. The company had downsized, leaving 3 sprawling buildings empty. My job was simple: walk the perimeter, check the doors, and make sure no teenagers were breaking in to ghost hunt. The pay was great, and for the first 2 months, the only thing I had to fight was sleep. But then came the second week of November. It was a Tuesday. I was doing my 2 a.m. patrol through Building C. The power was mostly shut off, so the only light came from the heavy-duty mag light in my hand. As I walked down the 3rd-floor corridor, my beam caught something on the gray carpet. Water droplets. They were perfectly spaced, like footprints. It hadn't rained in 4 days, and the plumbing to this wing had been shut off for weeks. I stopped walking and just listened. The building was dead silent. I keyed my radio to call the dispatch center, but all I got was static. I followed the wet spots. They led directly to the door of the old server room. I put my hand on the doorknob. It was freezing cold. I pushed it open, shining my light inside. The room was empty, racks of gutted servers, dust everywhere. But right in the center of the room, sitting on a folding chair, was an open lunchbox. It was a vintage metal one, and sitting next to it was a thermos, still steaming in the cold air. Someone was living in the building, and based on the steam, they had been sitting in this exact chair less than a minute ago. My heart hammered in my chest. I backed out of the room, keeping my light focused on the doorway. That's when I heard it. Thump. It didn't come from down the hall. It came from right above my head. As I aimed my flashlight at the ceiling, one of the acoustic drop ceiling tiles was slightly out of place. As I watched, paralyzed, the tile slowly slid back into place. I didn't run. I walked as quickly and quietly as I could toward the stairwell. As I descended the stairs, I could hear the faint rhythmic sound of hands and knees crawling through the aluminum grid of the ceiling, following me all the way to the exit. I quit the next morning. When the police searched the building, they found a makeshift apartment above the 3rd-floor tiles. Along with a sleeping bag and food, they found a notebook. It was filled with hundreds of charcoal drawings. Every single one of them was a sketch of me, looking up. After that night, I didn't think anything could scare me again until I heard what happened to the next person. There is a 40-mile stretch of rural Route 9 that locals refuse to drive after midnight. I found out why last autumn. I was working as an independent courier, driving a cargo van cross-state. My GPS routed me down Route 9 to save 20 minutes. It was a 2-lane road flanked by dense, suffocating pine trees. No streetlights, no cell service. Just me, my headlights, and the black asphalt. I was listening to a podcast to stay awake when my headlights caught a flash of yellow up ahead. I slowed the van down, squinting through the windshield. Sitting perfectly centered on the double yellow line was a child's stroller. It was pristine, bright yellow fabric, unscathed. I slammed on the brakes, stopping about 20 feet away. My first instinct was panic. Was there a baby out here? I threw the van into park and grabbed my flashlight, leaving the engine running and the headlights beaming directly at the stroller. I stepped out into the freezing air. The silence of the woods was heavy, oppressive. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded weak, swallowed by the trees. I walked up to the stroller and shined my light inside. It was empty, but it wasn't light. The seat was weighed down with 3 massive, jagged cinder blocks. Why would someone weigh down a stroller in the middle of a highway? And that's when I realized a roadblock. A sharp, piercing whistle cut through the air. It came from the tree line to my left. A second whistle answered from the tree line to my right. I dropped the flashlight and sprinted back to the van. As my hand grabbed the door handle, I heard the crunch of dry leaves. Heavy footsteps were rushing out of the woods, moving fast. I threw myself into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and hit the lock button just as something metal violently smashed against the passenger side window. The glass spiderwebbed. A man in a dark hunting jacket and a ski mask was standing right outside, raising a tire iron for a second swing. I slammed the van into drive and floored it, swerving wildly to clip the heavy stroller out of the way. The metal scraped beneath my chassis as I sped off into the dark. I didn't stop until I hit the nearest town gas station an hour later. When I called the police, they didn't seem surprised. They told me I was lucky I didn't stop to move the stroller to the shoulder. They said the people in the woods don't want your money, they just want the van, and they never leave witnesses. By the way, if you made it this far, comment the word awake below. I'm curious how many people are still listening. Let's keep going. My neighbor never turned his lights on, not once in the 3 years I lived next to him. I was renting a cheap, single-story duplex in a quiet suburb. It was a great deal, and the only downside was the paper-thin wall dividing my living room from my neighbor's. His name was Arthur. Older guy, kept to himself. But as the months went on, his behavior became entirely nocturnal. During the day, total silence, but at night, around 2 a.m., the thumping would start. At first, I thought he was pacing, just heavy footsteps walking back and forth. But one night, I stayed up late reading on the couch, right against the shared wall. I got up to go to the kitchen. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps on the other side of the wall followed me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I took 2 steps backward. Thump, thump. He was mirroring my movements exactly. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I decided to test it. I walked quickly to the front door, opened it, and slammed it shut, pretending to leave. But I stayed inside, creeping silently in my socks toward the shared wall. I pressed my ear against the drywall and held my breath. Silence. Then I heard a faint scratching sound coming from right beside my head. It sounded like fingernails scraping against the paint. I backed away slowly. As I looked closely at the wall, I noticed something I had never seen before. Behind an old picture frame the landlord had left hanging, there was a tiny, perfectly drilled hole. It went straight through the wall. I didn't think, I just acted. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, walked up to the hole, and shined the beam directly into it. Instantly, the hole went black. Something had blocked the light on the other side. I leaned in, just a fraction of an inch, and that's when I heard a raspy, whispering voice come through the tiny opening. "I see you." I packed a bag and left that night. The police arrived the next morning to investigate. They found Arthur's side of the duplex completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, just a single folding chair pushed right up against the shared wall. I bought a trail camera to see what was eating my garden. Instead, I saw what was watching my house. I had just moved to a secluded property in the Pacific Northwest. Thick woods surrounded the house on 3 sides. It was beautiful, but isolated. After my vegetable garden got torn up, I strapped a motion-activated trail camera to an oak tree facing the backyard. Every morning, I'd pull the SD card, expecting to see raccoons or deer. On the 4th morning, there were 42 new photos. I plugged the card into my laptop and clicked through.
The first few photos were just empty darkness, triggered by wind. But photo 12 made my blood run cold. The timestamp read 3:14 a.m. Standing at the very edge of the tree line, barely illuminated by the infrared flash, was a person. It was a tall, incredibly thin man wearing a ragged trench coat. He was standing perfectly still, staring directly at the house. I clicked to the next photo, 3:15 a.m., 10 feet closer. Photo 14, 3:16 a.m., another 10 feet. My hands were shaking as I clicked through. In every photo, he was closer, but his posture never changed. He was just gliding toward the house. By photo 40, his face was taking up the entire frame of the camera. He had hollowed-out eyes and a wide, unnatural smile. Photo 41 was completely black. I hesitated before clicking the final picture. When I did, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a photo of a wooden door, taken from the outside. It took me 5 seconds to realize it was my own front door. The camera had been unstrapped from the tree. The man had taken it, walked around to my front porch, and taken a picture of my door. I immediately called the police. While I was waiting for them to arrive, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the trail camera's companion app. Motion detected. I looked out the living room window toward the oak tree. The camera wasn't there. My phone buzzed again. Motion detected. I opened the app and looked at the live feed. It was pitch black, but I could hear breathing. And then I recognized the background behind the darkness. It was the ceiling of my own basement. The man hadn't just taken a picture of the front door. He had let himself inside. The listing said entire home, but I quickly realized I was only paying for the upper story. My girlfriend and I had booked a remote cabin for a long weekend. The host had a perfect 5-star rating, and the photos looked incredible. When we arrived, the place was spotless. We unpacked, poured some wine, and relaxed. Around 11 p.m., I went to check the thermostat in the hallway. That's when I noticed a heavy wooden door tucked under the staircase. Curious, I tried the handle. Locked. But it wasn't locked with a standard keyhole. There was a heavy iron deadbolt on my side of the door, and it was slid securely into place. I assumed it was just a basement for owner storage. We went to bed, locking the bedroom door out of habit. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sharp, metallic sound. Clack. It was heavy, unmistakable, the sound of a deadbolt sliding open. I sat bolt upright in bed. My girlfriend was still dead asleep. I quietly slipped out from under the covers and crept to the bedroom door, pressing my ear to the wood. I heard the slow, agonizing creak of floorboards in the hallway. Someone was walking in our rental. I held my breath, waiting. The footsteps moved toward the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator door open, followed by the clinking of glass. Someone was eating our food. I quietly woke my girlfriend, putting my hand over her mouth and gesturing her to stay silent. We grabbed our coats and phones, unlocked the bedroom door as quietly as possible, and slipped out the front door into the freezing night. We got into my car, locked the doors, and I floored it down the gravel driveway, not turning the headlights on until we hit the main road. We drove straight to the local sheriff's station and waited in the lobby until morning. An officer accompanied us back to the cabin to gather our things. The front door was open. The kitchen was a mess, our food half-eaten and left on the counter. The officer went down to check the basement. He came back up a few minutes later, looking visibly pale. "You guys need to pack your stuff and leave right now," he asked. I asked him what he found down there. He didn't answer directly. He just told us to look at the Airbnb listing again. I pulled up the app on my phone. The listing was still there, but the host's profile picture had been updated sometime in the middle of the night. It was a blurry overhead photo taken from the ceiling vent right above our bed, showing my girlfriend and I fast asleep. Have you ever stayed somewhere and felt like you weren't truly alone? Let me know in the comments. If these stories kept you awake, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I have plenty more true, disturbing experiences to share with you. Until next time, keep your doors locked and stay safe in the dark.